Welcome to the guide, Exile. In this guide we are going to go through the endgame mapping system and how we can go about using it. Path of Exile has quite a unique method for endgame progression, and after you complete the main storyline you will have access to the unique mapping system. Maps are simply items that can be obtained from monsters or traded for from other players. You will naturally start seeing the first tier of maps drop from monsters in the later part of the storyline. However, these maps are more than just items, they are complete zones with monsters contained within them. These maps allow you to customize your endgame content to your liking. But how do we go about entering these maps? What is actually in them? And what makes them more difficult and special than the story content? Well, let's get into it and explore the wonders of maps. So first, let's take a look at what maps are from a high level. As mentioned before, maps are simply items that can be found from slain monsters or traded for from other players once you get near the end of the storyline. You won't be needing to use these items until you're around level 68, so just save up ones you find while leveling. These maps can be crafted with currency just like all other items and come in normal, magic, rare, and unique rarities. Map crafting and affixes will be discussed later on in the guide. Now, to actually enter these maps, we will need a map device. The first map device you will have access to can be found in the Eternal Laboratory in Act 3. Here we can place the map into the map device and activate it. This will open up 6 portals into the map you placed into the device. Each time a portal is used, it is consumed. So you will only have 6 entries into the map before you can no longer enter it. Using a portal scroll in the map will not use an external entry portal into the map. It will only change the location of the exit portal from the map. The tile set and layout of the map is determined by the map base, with each map base having its own. For example, the desert map uses tile sets similar to the dried lake in Act 4, while the jungle valley map uses tile sets similar to the riverways in Act 2. The layouts of maps are randomly generated just like other zones in Path of Exile, and will not always be the same upon entering new maps of the same base. However, for the most part, maps will have a core recognizable layout with small variations. Now you may be wondering what the map tier number means. Well, this number describes the base difficulty of the map and the level of monsters within the map, as well as the base item levels that can drop. The map tier system begins at tier 1, the easiest map tier, and currently goes up to tier 16, the hardest map tier. A tier 1 map contains level 68 monsters, while a tier 16 map contains level 83 monsters. The easiest way to determine the map zone level is to add its tier number to 67, or once inside the map, look at the map overlay for the zone level. In general, you will want to be running map tiers that are at or below your character's level. Of course, you can run higher tiers of maps than your character's level if your character's defense and offense allows for this. Integrated into the map tier system, there are also map-based colors. These are white, yellow, and red. These colors determine which affixes can be crafted onto them, and to what strength these affixes can be. White maps will have the easier and weaker tier affixes, while red maps will have the stronger and higher tier affixes. White maps include map tiers 1 through 5, yellow maps include map tiers 6 through 10, and red maps include map tiers 11 through 16. There is currently a single tier 17 map, which is the realm of the endgame map boss, the Shaper. This zone is not open from a single map, but rather from a culmination of non-craftable map fragments. We will touch on the Shaper later in the guide. Every map has general packs of monsters inside of it, plus a unique boss at the end. For the most part, the base monsters in the map will be related to the tile set that the base map is of. However, certain affixes on the map can change which base monsters exist in the map. The unique boss in each map is generally based on a unique boss from the story, but with new mechanics, or sometimes there are completely new bosses that are not seen in the story. Every monster or breakable item in the map has a chance of dropping another map of that same tier or below. Magic and rare monster types can drop up to a +1 tier of map from the current map, while map bosses can drop up to a +2 tier of the current map. Maps of any tier below the tier you are running can also drop as well. So this means the range of maps that can drop are currently from tier 1 to your current map tier +2. You are not always guaranteed a map drop from maps or even a map drop of the same tier, but there is also no limit on map drops. So you can go multiple maps with no map returns or get 8 maps back from a single map. It is a wonderful system of RNG. After you have completed your first map and killed the boss within, you will be greeted by Zana in the Eternal Laboratory. Zana is the Forsaken Master that leads the main narrative in the endgame mapping system in Atlas. She, like other masters, can be invited into your hideout after completing one of her random missions in the wild, or her daily mission from another player's hideout. Zana provides a map device that you can place inside of your hideout, along with a small shop of maps you can purchase to help further your map progression. Zana's map device provides an innate item quantity bonus to maps equal to her level. It can also be used to craft more mods onto maps for a fee. These mods generally change each league, providing a different and varied modifications to add onto maps. Now that we have an understanding of what a map item is, the variations they can come in, and what's inside of one, we have to explore one more system before we discuss crafting maps. The Atlas provides a high-level view of all of the current maps in the game. It also dictates which map bases are connected to each other and the way which certain maps are obtained and the overall progression of your endgame. Initially, your atlas will start completely blank, only revealing small portions of each corner. These corners house the 4 Tier 1 map bases that you will have found naturally from the storyline content. As you work further into the atlas, the map tiers become higher, and more of the atlas becomes uncovered. To color in or unlock these maps on the atlas, you must have completed that map base. Completion constitutes that you have killed the map boss within that map, regardless of the rarity. Once you have killed that map's boss in any rarity of the map base, the map will become unlocked on your atlas. Unlocking a map on your atlas means that you can now get that map as a drop from any other map base that can drop that tier of map. To explain this further, I have to first explain how intermap connections in the atlas affect map drops. As you can see on the atlas, there are dotted lines that connect map bases to each other. Before you unlock a map base by killing the boss, you will only be able to receive uncolored locked bases as drops from maps that are connected to it on the atlas, or you can buy these locked maps from Zana or another player. So to solidify this, let's take a look at a quick map drop example. Say I have unlocked the beach and the dunes map bases, but not the Val Pyramid map base. This means if I run a dunes map, I can get the beach map since it's unlocked and within the tier range that the tier 5 dunes map can drop, which is a tier 1 through 7 map. However, I could not get a Val Pyramid map from the dunes map. Even though it is within the tier range that a dunes map can drop, it is not unlocked, so it can only drop from connected maps to it. If I run a beach map, I can get the Val Pyramid map base since it's connected via the atlas, but I cannot get a dunes map since the beach map is a tier 2 and can only drop up to tier 4 maps from the boss. Another mechanic that the atlas contains is the atlas bonus. Each map color, white, yellow, and red, have their own bonus objectives to complete. For white map bases, you must simply complete the map base, remember that completion is killing the map boss, in a magic rarity. Yellow maps require you to complete the map base in a rare rarity, and red maps require you to complete the map in a rare rarity, but corrupted by a Vol Orb. Once you complete a map's bonus objective, there will be an orange circle around the map in the atlas, and you will gain 1% to your atlas bonus. This atlas bonus is shown in the center of the atlas as a progress bar. It is a percentage chance that your map drops will roll +1 tier to what they would have been originally. Once this number exceeds 100%, your maps will always drop +1 tier, and numbers over 100% will be a second roll on maps to roll +2 tiers. This is a very strong bonus for sustaining and progressing through the maps, and is recommended you try and get this to 100% or as close to 100% as possible. Some maps will also have a blue circle around it. This indicates that the map contains a Shaper's Orb. This orb can be obtained by completing the map base's bonus objective. A Shaper's Orb can be then used to shape a map tier of the listed tier on the Shaper's Orb to +5 tiers. For example, if I am to complete the Oba's Cursed Trove map's bonus objective, I will receive a tier 8 Shaper's Orb. This tier 8 Shaper's Orb can then be used on any tier 8 map that you have unlocked to shape it into a tier 13 base. Now only shaped tier 13 versions of that map will drop instead of the original tier 8 version. However, any original versions of that map you may have in your stash or inventory will still remain their original tier. Ultimately, this allows players to customize their atlas further, shaping map bases that they enjoy and letting them run those map bases at higher levels. Cartographer sextants are a special type of currency that is specifically used on the atlas itself. These sextants can be used on unlocked map bases to add more modifiers to the map and any surrounding maps within the red circle that they create. There are 3 sextant variations, one for each map tier color. Apprentice Cartographer sextants can be applied on maps up to tier 5, Journeyman Cartographer sextants can be applied on maps up to tier 10, and Master Cartographer sextants can be applied on maps up to tier 16. Now, even though there are tier limitations to sextants on application, maps above the tier restriction can still benefit from the sextant modifier if they are within the sextant radius. So this means if you apply an apprentice sextant to a map and there is a tier 6+ map in the radius, that tier 6+ map will still benefit from the modifier. There are various modifiers for each tier of sextants, and usually they add more monster types or unique bonuses to the characters. After these sextants have been applied, you can simply use a map base within the sextant modification area to activate it and use those sextant modifiers. Do note that sextant modifiers have a set number of uses, and will disappear after they have been completely used. Now, the main draw of the Atlas is the final convergence point, the Shaper's Realm. The Shaper is the final boss of the mapping system and is currently one of the toughest endgame bosses. To get to his realm, you must use 4 special fragments that are held by his guardians in the tier 16 maps surrounding his realm on the Atlas. These guardians include the Chimera, the Hydra, the Minotaur, and the Phoenix. These guardians are very difficult in comparison to tier 15 maps and should not be underestimated, and are really endgame bosses themselves. Each guardian has their own special mechanics and immunities that should be understood before fighting them. Each guardian also holds a fragment to the Shaper's Realm. Once you have each guardian's fragment, they can be placed into the map device such that they form a square, and they can be activated to open up the Shaper's Realm. The Shaper is a very difficult fight, but has some very nice rewards if you get lucky. However, defeating the guardians and Shaper are beyond the scope of this guide, and strategies for these bosses will be discussed in another guide. Now that we know about the map bases, the Atlas, and the mechanics that come along with both, how do we effectively progress through the maps? There are many strategies you can take for mapping depending on what your current financial or Atlas status is. Here, we will talk about crafting maps from a fresh Atlas, what you should be doing to progress up through the map tiers, and what currencies you should be using when. To start, you should first know what types of affixes can appear on maps and what they provide to your mapping experience. Maps can roll a wide swath of affixes that affect the zone and the monsters within. There are different tiers of the certain affixes depending on the color of the map base. However, we won't concern ourselves so much with the tiers of the affixes like with items, but instead look out for good and bad affixes in general. To start, we should consider the implicits that can be added to maps via the affixes, which are item quantity, item rarity, and monster pack size. Using Cartographer's chisels will increase the map's item quantity percentage by a maximum of 20%. Like with other quality enhancing currency, it's recommended to use these when the map is of normal quality to get the full 5% per chisel. The item quantity modifier affects the amount of items that drop in the map, including other map drops. The item rarity modifier affects the rarity of items that drop, so a higher rarity percentage, the higher percentage of magic, rare, and unique items you will see. Finally, the monster pack size modifier increases the number of monsters that can appear in the zone, which also inherently increases the item quantity of drops as there are more monsters to kill. When crafting maps, you will mainly want to look for combinations of the modifiers that provide bonuses to item quantity and monster pack size. It is most important to get pack size on maps as this provides more experience and item quantity of drops, furthering your character and progression. Now it becomes a bit more complicated in what affixes you should look for when rolling maps for these bonuses, since not all builds can run each map mod. What I can summarize here are some general good and bad affixes for item quantity and pack size that most builds can run. There are of course a lot more affixes, these are only a small subset to give you an idea of what to look for. So here are some good affixes that provide pack size bonuses. This selection of good affixes should be doable on most build types and are worth looking for since they provide pack size bonuses and do not make maps really dangerous. There are of course many more affixes that provide pack size bonuses, but they are more build specific and should be checked against for your own build before running them. Here are some bad affixes that provide no pack size bonus and make maps just really deadly. These affixes are really deadly when combined together and again provide no pack size bonuses, except for minus maximum player resistances, which can be very deadly depending on your build. This means that the modifiers ultimately make the map deadlier without greatly increasing your chances of getting any items or map returns. Avoiding combinations of these will be difficult, especially in high tier maps, but if you can avoid combinations of these, do so. So now let's move on to how to go about crafting your maps and the best methods to take in progressing through your Atlas. To start, you will only have access to tier 1 maps in the corners of the Atlas. Getting low tier white maps is very simple since they are the most common map bases you will be seeing. In that regard, you will not have to craft these bases with a lot of currency to ensure progression or returns in the white map bases. White maps are also very easy to complete Atlas bonus on, since you only need to complete them at magic rarity. So for white maps, you will only need to transmute and augment them to ensure they have a prefix and a suffix. If you cannot run the mods on the map, feel free to use an alteration or two rolling over it. But do not concern yourself with getting the best rolls possible or even a pack size implicit, only something that your build can run. The biggest thing to remember before you start mapping is that map returns are very random and will not always be consistent. Even though you may be rolling your maps really hard or with the perfect affixes, this does not always guarantee map returns. Do not get discouraged in the beginning of your Atlas, as it'll be very slow and tough moving from white to yellow and then yellow to red tier maps. Do not take it wrongly if you have a bad map or two of returns, just keep on running well-rolled maps and you will eventually level out on luck. Believe me. Once you get over each map tier hump, it gets easier and easier and you will soon be able to sustain all map tiers with ease. When running maps, you will begin to notice good and bad map layouts. I will mention later on good map bases to look out for in this regard. For now, I recommend unlocking and completing all of the white map bases and the bonus objectives that you can to boost your Atlas progression, regardless of their layout. This is because you will only be running these map bases for a short period of levels, and there is no reason to lose out on Atlas bonus for such short-lived bad layouts. Also remember that if you have unlocked or found Zana, she sells maps in her shop that you may have not unlocked yet. They are a bit pricey, but can be of great value in the beginning of a league, or if you are playing solo self-found when you just can't get a certain map base due to bad luck. Now that you've filled out most of your white map bases, you will want to start getting into yellow map bases. You may have already had some or may need to get some. This will require that you start crafting your tier 5 and up map bases with pack size implicits from here on in. You will want to get at least one pack size percentage, depending on the affix, can range between 10 to 15%, that grants pack size. Here you can continue with transmutes, augmentations, and alterations, and or start crafting a few tier 5 and up maps with Orbs of Alchemy until you get a decent selection of tier 6 maps. Remember that mid-tier yellow maps require completion of rare versions of their bases for Atlas bonus. I do not recommend using chisels or chaos orbs to craft any maps up through tier 9. Only use alchemy and scouring orbs on tier 5 plus maps to adjust the maps such that it has a pack size implicit and doable affixes for your build if you choose to craft them rare. If you feel like you are not getting proper returns, feel free to be more liberal with your alchemy orbs and craft some more rare maps than magic maps. You will want to continue this process for crafting maps up to tier 9 maps, crafting at least one pack size affix and ensuring to complete all of the bonus objectives that you can. Now once you reach tier 10 plus maps, you will want to start using alchemy orbs more liberally, trying to get one or more pack size modifiers on maps. This is because you want to push over into red tier maps, which are tier 11 plus. Here is when I also would recommend that you start using some chisels, especially when you're first starting to push your Atlas. I will usually start using 2 chisels on tier 10 map bases on top of getting good affixes when first pushing my Atlas. Using chisels is not required on tier 10 maps after you have completed most of your Atlas and have a good selection of map bases. Like with white maps, I recommend unlocking and completing as many bonus objectives on as many of these yellow map bases as possible. Again, getting through to red high tier maps is an arduous process and takes time and effort. After you have achieved a decent pool of red maps, say 8 to 10, you can stop using chisels on tier 10 maps and move on to chiseling and crafting your red maps. Great! You have made it to the final tier of maps. You no longer have to worry about adjusting into another tier of maps, but you will have to worry about sustaining just these high tiers of maps. This is more difficult than the previous white and yellow map tiers. Here I use at least 2 chisels on all red tier maps, depending on my financial base, and always use 4 chisels on map bases at and above tier 13, regardless of how completed my Atlas is. Of course, if you don't have any chisels, you can either trade other players for them, or sometimes you can get away with running tier 11 through 12 maps without chisels. You always want to ensure that you are crafting rare map bases, and getting at least 2 pack size affixes on red tier maps. Here is when you can start using chaos orbs to craft your maps. You can still use alchemy and scouring orbs to craft them as well, depending on your financial status. Now the affixes on these map bases are very strong and can be very deadly with the right combinations, so make sure to not take them lightly. In red maps, the bonus objective requires that you complete corrupted rare versions of the map. This means that you have to use a Vol orb on rare versions of the map you wish to complete the bonus objective on. This can have many outcomes, which I will list here. Vol orbing maps can result in having no effect other than adding the corrupted property, add or subtract a level, changing the base type to an appropriate one for the new level, and randomizing the affixes, re-roll the map into a rare map with up to 8 random affixes. This also includes the possibility of changing the map base, or unidentifying the map, retaining its affixes and item quantity bonuses, while also giving it a 30% bonus to item quantity since it is now unidentified. Corrupted map bosses will also have the chance of dropping sacrifice fragments for the Atziri set and Vol skill gems. As with other corrupted items, these maps cannot be altered, and as we can see, a couple of bad things can happen. I recommend for red tier map bonus completions to first run the map without Vol orbing it to unlock it on your Atlas so that you can more easily receive another map of that base later on. I then recommend Vol orbing later maps of that base that you get in case the map becomes undoable for your build or ends up changing bases. However, this brings up a good point. You can also try Vol orbing maps to get the +1 tier on bases connected to other bases you have not unlocked yet or want to run, helping expedite your Atlas completion. For the most part, Vol orbing maps will generally result in very high item quantity and pack size maps, but at the cost of them becoming really tough or completely undoable. So I only recommend Vol orbing your maps if you are willing to pay the price. For new players, again, I simply recommend that you do all the maps you come across for the best chances of sustaining maps. Of course, there are good layouts and bad layouts for these tiers, and I will go through some of the good layouts in the next section. Now within the red tier maps, tier 14 maps will be quite difficult to sustain initially. You will not regularly be getting tier 15 and 16 maps, so do not worry if you only see a few here and there. They are not meant to be chained back to back. You will, for the most part, be able to endlessly chain tier 11 through 13 maps with ease with a filled out atlas, that is, being at or above 100% atlas bonus. That pretty much covers it for the general map crafting advice and how to initially push through your atlas. Now, I would like to mention the experience penalties when you are leveling in the endgame. You incur experience penalties if you are outside of the safe zone of your level. In between levels 70 and 90, you will have around a 7-level safe zone where you will not have an experience penalty. Once you start running maps that are outside of this zone, you will begin to have experience penalties, not receiving the full amount of experience from slain monsters. This will not be so much of an issue for you leveling your builds into around a level 85 plus. For the most part, if you are running maps at a decent rate, it is perfectly viable and reasonable to endlessly run tier 10 through 12 maps for experience, all the way to level 100 if you wish. Generally, after I have a good pool of red maps, I run tiers 11 through 14 as frequently as I can because I play softcore and love to run ridiculous maps. So here are some general strategies for map bases to look for, which to shape, and which to complete if you really want to be hardcore about it. Here are some good map bases to look for and run frequently, and are also good candidates for Shaper's Orbs. The reason these map bases are so great is because they are very linear and there's not much backtracking or confusion in their layouts. This makes them great options for shaping. Here are some good high tier map bases that cannot be shaped but are very good base layouts. Aside from these bases, there are many others that are decent and some that are just plain bad. I will not be listing all of these other map bases, as it is the rest of the atlas. I also believe as a new player or when starting fresh, it is really worth doing whatever map bases you can to ensure returns and progression. This also lets you as a player figure out which content you do not like, rather than me just telling you to never run that content ever. A lot of players choose to exercise not completing bad or undesirable map bases so that they will not receive them as drops. This is for more experienced players with knowledge of how to efficiently farm maps. Again, I recommend that new players try and experience all the content they can and get the best atlas completion as possible to sustain returns, but you can pursue this option if you would like. As this guide is focused on new players, I will not give a full breakdown on this process. If you are interested in specific atlas layouts, I recommend checking out some video guides from eTup and PoX. They give detailed explanations as to why they chose to shape and run only certain maps. These videos are linked in the description below. If you ever have a massive surplus of maps or bases that you do not wish to run, you can actually upgrade these bases into higher tier maps. Treating 3 of the same base maps into a vendor will provide you with the next tier of map base that is connected to the original in the atlas. Since there are many situations where there are split connection paths or no direct tier upgrades in the atlas, this will unfortunately result in only being able to upgrade to a certain map base or staying at the same map tier when performing the recipe. I recommend checking the resulting map before completing the trade in these scenarios. Well, I hope that this guide has helped you sort out what maps are, what the atlas is, and how to go about crafting and progressing through the atlas. If you have any questions about mapping or need help with anything Path of Exile, feel free to message me here or come by my Twitch channel. I'm generally streaming most weeknights and weekend afternoons in Eastern Standard Time Zone, and always trying to help out anybody that comes by. Otherwise, get to pushing those map tiers, Exile. Someone has to be giving Shaper the business.